All right, let's talk about something that is, no joke, one of the most important things you'll ever learn in JavaScript: objects. I mean, if you want to build pretty much any modern web app, you've got to get comfortable with these. They are absolutely crucial. So let's dive right in. So, have you ever looked at your code and it feels like a total mess? You've got all these loose variables floating around, in your head that they all belong together. But in the code, they're just separate. It's a super common problem, especially when you're just getting your sea legs. I mean, look at this. For one single grocery item, you've got 4 different variables. Okay, maybe that's fine for one, but what about 10 items? Now you're at 40 variables. 100 items, you're juggling 400 variables. It just spirals out of control, right? Your code gets messy, it's impossible to read, and it becomes an absolute nightmare to manage. There's got to be a better way, right? And you guessed it, there absolutely is. This is where JavaScript objects save the day. Think of them as the perfect little container for exactly this kind of problem. So what is an object, really? Well, at its heart, it's just a collection of related data and functionality. The filing cabinet analogy you see here, it's perfect. Imagine all those loose variables were just paper scattered all over your desk. An object is like grabbing a folder, giving it a name, and putting all those related papers right inside. Everything is in one neat, tidy place. And the best part? Making one is super easy. You just use these curly braces. That's what we call an object literal. And inside, you just list out your data in these things called key value pairs. The key is like the label on the folder tab. Here, it's text. And the value is the actual piece of information, buy milk. And together, that key and value make up what we call a property of the object. Okay, this right here really drives the point home. It's like a classic before and after shot. On the left, you've got the chaos, right? The 4 loose variables. And on the right, all that same information but tucked neatly inside one single grocery item object. It is so much cleaner, so much easier to understand at a glance. It is a complete game changer for keeping your code sane. But wait, there's more. Objects aren't just these static boxes for data that you set and forget. No way. They are living, breathing things that you can interact with. So let's talk about how we can actually access and change the stuff inside. Getting at the data inside an object is honestly a breeze. The way you'll do it 99% of the time is with dot notation. It's exactly what it sounds like. The object's name, a dot, then the name of the property you want. Super simple. You can also use bracket notation, which is useful in some special cases. And check this out. You can change a value just as easily, or even add a brand new property to the object whenever you want. They're totally flexible. Okay, this is where things get really cool. Because objects don't just hold data like text and numbers. They can hold functions too. And when you put a function inside an object, it gets a cool new name, a method. And why is this so huge? Because it means our objects can now do stuff. They can have actions, they can have behaviors. They're not just nouns anymore, they're verbs too. Take a look at this simple calculator object. See? It's got some data, a property to hold the current result, but it also has a method called add. So when we call calculator.add5, it takes that 5 and changes its own internal result. Then we call it again with 3, and it updates itself again. The data and the function that works on that data are bundled together. This idea is, well, it's one of the most important concepts in all of programming. Okay, that's all cool in theory, but you're probably thinking, how does this actually help me build something real? Great question. Let's connect all these dots and see how objects power a real-world app, like a simple shopping list. So to build any kind of interactive app, we need to understand this big, important idea called application state. It sounds complicated, but it's not. State is just the data that represents what's happening in your app right now. For our shopping list, the state is just the list of items. That's it. And how do you think we're going to represent each individual item in that list? You got it, with an object. Now watch what happens when a user adds an item. The first thing our code does is not to create some HTML. Nope. The most important step is right here. We create a brand new JavaScript object. We give it a text property and a purchased property, which we'll set to false to start. Then we just push that little object into our main items array. And boom, we've just updated the state of our application. And this is the magic trick right here. That array of objects, that becomes our single source of truth. Everything the user sees on the screen is based on only that data. We have a function that just loops through our array, and for every single object it finds, it creates a list item on the page in the DOM. So the UI you see is just a direct reflection of the data in our state. The data drives everything. Okay, so what about when you click on an item to cross it off? Now, the old school way would be to go find that HTML element and change it directly. But we don't do that. No. Instead, we do something much smarter. We just find the object in our array that corresponds to what was clicked, and we change its purchase property from false to true. That's it. We only change the data. Then we just call our render function again and let it rebuild the UI based on that new data. And when that render function runs again, it looks at that item, it sees, oh, hey, purchased is true now, and it adds a special CSS class that strikes through the text. And that's the whole loop. You change the data, and the view updates automatically to reflect that change. This cycle, update the state, then re-render the UI, is, and I'm not exaggerating, the absolute core of how almost all modern web apps are built. It's that important. All right, let's wrap this up. What's the big takeaway? After all this, what's the one thing you really need to remember about why objects are so darn important? It's pretty simple, really. First, they clean up your code, turning that mess of variables into neat, organized packages. That makes everything easier to read and work with. But the real superpower is that they are the foundation for managing application state. And managing state is the secret to building all those cool interactive apps that feel alive. So if there's just one thing you remember from all this, let it be this thought. Objects are the bridge. They're the bridge between your raw data and what the user actually sees and interacts with on the screen, the DOM. They connect what your app knows with what your app shows. If you can truly master objects, you're not just learning a piece of syntax, you're learning the fundamental secret of modern web development. Thanks so much for watching.